Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 45, Elevator Incident and the Mastermind. Something feels off. Kudo Shinichi, after parting ways with Komaeda Nagito, did not head back towards his home but instead waited in place for a while. As expected, just when Komaeda Nagito's figure was about to leave his line of sight, a familiar figure emerged from around the corner, sneaking behind. Kudo Shinichi's gaze darkened. That's right, it's the young businessman he just saw. Why is he tailing Komaeda-senpai? This guy definitely has a problem. Considering that if he immediately went to catch him, the other party could find an excuse and claim they were just passing by, Kudo Shinichi decided to keep tailing them. Thus, he followed as well. Komaeda Nagito, thinking about the convenience of going to school, found that the distance between the hotel and the school wasn't too far. Considering that it was easier to walk directly because if he took the bus, he would still end up walking a bit more anyway, he continued to walk back directly. The three of them maintained a certain distance from each other as they made their way back to the hotel. The newbie member looked bewildered as he watched Komaeda Nagito enter the hotel lobby and stopped in his tracks. Huh? Wait a minute. Why a hotel? If he's attending school in Tokyo, doesn't he have a fixed residence? How can the hotel let him sneak in and steal the USB? The newbie member had lost his dreams. Kudo Shinichi, observing from behind, saw the newbie member not follow inside. After thinking for a moment, he decided not to hide his presence and walked up to pat the other's shoulder. Hello, may I ask? With that pat, the newbie was so startled that his whole body trembled. When he turned around and saw Kudo Shinichi, his pupils suddenly contracted. I noticed it seemed like you were tailing. Before Kudo Shinichi could finish his sentence, the newbie member immediately turned and ran. He wasn't stupid. Just now at the school gate, he saw this person together with his target. They must know each other, and they've probably realized he's tailing Komaeda Nagito. If he didn't run now, when would he? The presence under his hands suddenly gone, Kudo Shinichi didn't expect this guy to flee so decisively and quickly. Hey! Kudo Shinichi had just taken 2 steps in pursuit when his shoulder was suddenly grabbed, and a somewhat familiar voice spoke behind him. What's going on? Kudo Shinichi froze, turned around, and found that it was indeed the person he was thinking of. Dressed in a black suit, with bandages wrapped around various parts of his body, giving off an unnerving smile, just standing there, he exuded an eerie sense of pressure. Dazai-san. Kudo Shinichi had no intention of escaping or continuing his pursuit of the suspicious person. Instead, he carefully greeted him. What are you doing here? Came to find Komaeda-kun, you know. Dazai Osamu made no effort to hide his purpose. You were tailing that person just now. I see, Komaeda-kun got involved with some weirdo again. Looking at Dazai Osamu, who didn't need anyone to reply but instead answered his own questions, clearly laying out the truth of the matter, and casually labeling someone as a weirdo, Kudo Shinichi couldn't help but raise his brows. Actually, the strangest person here is you, Port Mafia's Dazai Osamu. Do you really not have any sense of awareness? Dazai Osamu had probably gathered the intel he wanted and let go of Kudo Shinichi in a cheerful mood before turning and heading toward the hotel. Kudo Shinichi hesitated to speak, but in the end, all he could do was take out his phone and compose an email to Komaeda-senpai. Senpai, you're being followed. I saw him tailing you all the way to the hotel entrance. He looked at it and somehow felt that his words made him sound like a stalker. Even though he knew that senpai wouldn't misunderstand, he still added a little more. I felt suspicious, so I followed, and even took pictures, though unfortunately, I couldn't get a clear shot of the face. Senpai, be careful. Afterward, he attached the photos of the figure and the side profile and sent them to Komaeda Nagito. While waiting for the elevator at the hotel, Komaeda Nagito suddenly heard his phone beep. He casually took it out to check, and after seeing it was a message from Kudo Shinichi, he clicked on it to take a look. The stalker, he doesn't know him at all, and he doesn't seem to be like those kidnappers scouting the area. Strange. Komaeda Nagito was just about to delve into pondering what could have possibly attracted a stalker recently, when suddenly, the elevator arrived. He was staring at his phone in deep thought, taking a step forward, when suddenly someone next to him deliberately bumped into him, squeezing into the elevator ahead of him. Komaeda Nagito lost his balance from the bump, with one hand holding his bag and the other holding his phone, unable to grab onto anything to steady himself, falling backward uncontrollably. Luckily, someone stopped his fall in time. Komaeda Nagito suddenly felt a pair of hands grab both of his arms from behind. He could sense something pressing against his back, and in the next moment, those hands adjusted his leaning posture to upright. "Don't walk while looking at your phone. Never thought I'd say something like this in my lifetime, but it's quite amusing." Dazai-Osamu pushed the dazed Komaeda Nagito toward the elevator and said in a light tone, "But this time, it's not Komaeda-kun's fault." Some defeated mutt got mad elsewhere and, not daring to confront the person who angered him, decided to find someone who looked easy to bully instead. It's truly pathetic. With such a narrow perspective, no wonder his wife wants to cheat on him. What? The area was clearly quite spacious, and the man who had intentionally bumped into Komaeda Nagito just now, had been in the elevator playing on his phone, suddenly heard these words and no longer pretended that nothing had happened. Instead, his expression darkened as he looked up toward Dazai-Osamu. However, his fierce gaze stopped at Dazai-Osamu, who was dressed in a black suit and had bandages stained with blood. The aggression in his eyes instantly dissolved, and after locking eyes with those cold, indifferent eyes for a brief moment, he quickly averted his gaze, moving closer to the elevator's advertisement poster as if to avoid attention. A member of the mafia. That's right, this guy is part of the mafia. Damn it, it was just a moment of dissatisfaction, randomly choosing a seemingly weakling among the youngsters. Why did I end up provoking the mafia? He didn't even do anything. Wasn't it just, accidentally, bumping into someone a little? Doesn't the mafia have any sense of reason? Also, how did they find out his wife was cheating? Did they investigate him? The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. The man looked like he was still browsing his phone, but in reality, he couldn't read a single word. His mind was filled with bloody, terrifying thoughts. Dazai-Osamu paid no attention to the fact that the man in front of him was actually psychologically fragile. He ushered Komaeda Nagito in, casually pressed the floor button, too lazy to circle around to Komaeda Nagito's side, instead leaning on his shoulder, glancing at his phone. "That little detective really cares about you, huh?" "Yeah, Kudo-kun has helped me a lot," Komaeda Nagito admitted. Dazai-Osamu glanced again at the photo on the phone, seemingly in thought. "Komaeda-kun, have you encountered anything interesting lately?" Komaeda Nagito immediately thought of Natsume Soseki, but this was something he couldn't mention. Before his hesitation even showed, Dazai-Osamu had already noticed. "It seems to be a secret, how great, Komaeda-kun is always able to encounter something interesting." Every time Dazai-Osamu saw Komaeda Nagito, he wanted to sigh. "Why is it that I can never?" He hadn't even finished speaking when a strange noise suddenly came from above the elevator. Dazai-Osamu's expression changed, and he pushed Komaeda Nagito to the side of the elevator. "Hold on to the handrail." Komaeda Nagito instinctively pressed against the elevator wall and grabbed the handrail. In the next moment, the elevator started to shake violently, and soon after, there was a sensation of weightlessness amid the jolts. The elevator malfunctioned. Komaeda Nagito immediately became aware of the current situation, but he couldn't speak, because opening his mouth now could easily result in biting his tongue. Fortunately, very soon, due to the emergency braking system being activated, the elevator suddenly stopped, without really plummeting to the bottom. The man, because he had been looking at his phone the whole time, his delayed reaction made him unable to steady himself during the shaking, causing his body to crash around inside the elevator. Nearly hitting his head, the man knelt on the floor, holding his head, and after feeling that it had stabilized, he slowly looked up. Is it over?" Komaeda Nagito sighed. "I really haven't encountered an elevator malfunction in a long time. Sorry for dragging you into this, Dazai-kun. If you hadn't come to find me, you definitely wouldn't have run into this kind of situation. What kind of situations did you encounter before? Dazai-osamu looked around, casually asking. Just the normal malfunction, stuck between floors, suddenly losing power, that sort of thing. Well, today you get to add a new experience, Dazai-osamu smiled at Komaeda Nagito. This time it's a human-caused incident, which could temporarily be considered an attempted murder. I just heard an explosion. What kind of joke is this? Are they really coming after you? I'm just an ordinary person, I have nothing to do with you guys, I'm not going to die in a place like this. The man broke down. Let me out of here. Right, the door. With life and death at hand, he no longer cared about the fear he felt towards Dazai-osamu earlier. After all, the worst that could happen was dying here, so couldn't he vent a bit before dying? In front of him was the elevator door. He couldn't get up, so he stayed in a kneeling position, trying to pry the door open forcefully like in the movies. Dazai-osamu quietly approached from behind, pressing down on his neck, the cold touch making the man shiver and calm down a bit. Based on the time spent during the fall and the floor where it happened, we should currently be between the 7th and 8th floors. You can't open the door and get out. But, it's just... The man felt his blood vessels pounding wildly under this dark-haired youth's grip. How would you know if you don't try? Dazai-osamu sighed. Talking with an idiot is truly exhausting. Let me be straightforward. If you dare make a move, I'll kill you before you even fall to your death. The stranger. Komaeda Nagito put down his bag, raised his head, and looked around. Dazai-kun, is there still a bomb here? The unfamiliar man suddenly stiffened. But bomb? As expected, Komaeda-kun can understand. I really want Komaeda-kun as my direct subordinate. Dazai-osamu, after confirming that this person wouldn't act rashly, let go of him, but for safety reasons, still explained a bit. The explosion just now merely caused the elevator to fall. If a bomb was set at the very top, then it must have also taken into account the emergency brake function of the elevator. Trying to handle everything at once isn't impossible, but it will lead to complications, possibly with further plans. Like increasing the sense of fear, observing the victim's final struggles before death, and so on. Komaeda Nagito continued, I remember there's a type of bomb that, once activated, requires a stable state. If it's externally disturbed, it will explode. If you forcefully open the door, the elevator will experience some vibrations. If that kind of bomb is installed here, maintaining calmness and reducing movement is the best course of action. Komaeda-kun understands quite a bit, huh? Can you defuse bombs? Someone thought of teaching me, but it was against the rules, and another person discouraged it. In the end, I was only taught to spot signs of a bomb and to quickly report it. Dazai-osamu let out a laugh. You all still find time to laugh. The man collapsed in frustration by the elevator door. What do we do now? Komaeda Nagito pondered and said, it shouldn't be random, right? Are they after me? Speaking of which, I have recently come across someone who seems somewhat dangerous. Someone like Jin. It's not the organization you think, Dazai-osamu said. They don't want to go against the Port Mafia. The man shivered slightly. Port Mafia. Truly a chaotic darkness. If he doesn't listen, that person might really kill him. But if he listens, there might still be a slim chance of survival. Who could it be? Komaeda Nagito tried to recall. Could it be targeting the Port Mafia? The man boldly spoke, pretending to help with the guess. Dazai-osamu, this is only my second time at this hotel, old man, why don't you think about who you've offended? Me? How could I? The man began to speak, but his tone gradually weakened. Komaeda Nagito looked down at the man lying there. Seems like you've offended too many people, you can't even remember. Truly trash among trash. The man was angry but didn't dare to say anything because he knew that he himself couldn't defuse the bomb, but perhaps that Port Mafia boy might understand a bit. Komaeda Nagito took out his phone to check. Still has a signal. I can call for help. Since the elevator malfunctioned, someone outside should have reported it already. Dazai-Osamu waved at the man, who didn't dare to refuse, but was also afraid that too large a movement would trigger the bomb, so he could only inch his way over. Sit here and don't move, Dazai-Osamu commanded, then stepped on the man's shoulder, reaching for the top of the elevator, feeling around everywhere. Not knowing what he was doing, after a while the mafia boy slowly opened the ceiling, then poked his head out, and checked the dark elevator shaft a bit before sitting back down in the elevator. Stay still and don't move, there really is a bomb here. Dazai-Osamu looked down and asked. Komaeda-kun, do you have scissors? I have them, I also have a screwdriver. Komaeda Nagito immediately rummaged through his backpack. Here. Dazai-Osamu didn't ask why he carried all that. Taking them, he said, it's a simple mechanism, probably not too many complicated components. I'll open it first and take a look. You can call the police, have them not obstruct things without helping. After that, he immediately turned around and continued with his work. Komaeda Nagito obediently dialed Hagiwara Kenji's mobile number. Komaeda-kun. That's rare, calling me so proactively. We just saw each other recently. Hagiwara Kenji's tone was very serious because he knew Komaeda Nagito wasn't the type to maintain contact without a reason. Did something happen? I'm staying at a hotel, and something happened to the elevator, Komaeda Nagito said concisely. I just found a bomb on the top of the elevator. Hagiwara Kenji was silent for a moment. He was really anxious, really worried, but he couldn't show any of that. He needed to make those in the midst of danger feel at ease. So he calmly said, if it hasn't exploded yet, you can rest assured for now. Don't act recklessly. Jinpei and I will be there shortly. How many people are in the elevator? Including me, 3. Don't tell me you destroyed the top of the elevator. Forget it. Hagiwara Kenji advised, patiently wait for the professionals, and be careful of any listening devices. Suddenly, Dazai-Osamu threw something down from above. The bug seems to be broken. I've already disarmed the bomb. Probably realizing that making a bit of disturbance wouldn't matter, Dazai-Osamu directly jumped down, grabbed Komaeda Nagito's phone, and said, tell the police arriving at the hotel to investigate. What's your name? He kicked the man. The man reluctantly reported his name. Did you hear that? It's him. Investigate who he might have offended in this hotel earlier, probably the staff or someone similar. The possibility that the culprit is among them is quite high. Hagiwara Kenji didn't ask who had suddenly jumped in, he directly agreed and then asked in a serious tone, just now, were you the one disarming the explosive? Relax, Dazai-Osamu said lazily, although I haven't disarmed as many explosives as the explosive ordnance disposal team, I'm still quite skilled. I can distinguish between an active bomb and one that's disarmed. You should quickly open the door to the 7th floor. We're between the 7th and 8th floors. After speaking, Dazai-Osamu immediately threw the phone back to Komaeda Nagito. Komaeda Nagito took it and continued, thank you, Inspector Hagiwara. Hagiwara Kenji asked in disbelief, who are you stuck in the elevator with, huh? The voice sounded like a child in their teens, but they could disarm explosives and seemed very familiar. Are kids these days all this impressive? Komaeda Nagito cleared his throat. Sorry. Fine. Anyway, Jinpei-chan just made contact with the police at the scene. Your situation here has also been conveyed. Just wait a little longer, Hagiwara Kenji said. See you soon. 10 minutes passed, and eventually the hotel staff opened the doors to the 7th floor elevator shafts, allowing them each to take an elevator to the top, providing a way to lift them up. Although they waited in the pitch-black elevator shaft for over 10 seconds, as soon as they reached the light of the yellow-lit hallway, the man's nerves relaxed, and the emotions he had been unable to show finally burst out, as he knelt on the floor and cried uncontrollably. As for Dazai-Osamu and Komaeda Nagito, aside from a little dirt on their bodies, they seemed completely unaffected. Dazai-Osamu casually slipped his hands into his pockets, leaning lazily against Komaeda Nagito, and in a drawn-out voice said, Officer-san, we are the victims here. I have been greatly traumatized and need to go home to calm myself down, or else I might be left with lasting psychological scars. Could we leave now? Everyone. Even the man's sobbing was interrupted, looking incredulously at Dazai-Osamu, shocked by his blatant lying skills. Komaeda Nagito smiled awkwardly but said nothing. At that moment, Hagiwara Kenji ran over. Komaeda-kun. Komaeda Nagito greeted the two familiar police officers, Masuda Jinpei and Hagiwara Kenji. They evaluated Komaeda Nagito for a moment, and after concluding he was fine, casually glanced at the seemingly boneless Dazai-Osamu beside him. With just one glance, they could discern Dazai-Osamu's occupation. Komaeda-kun, your choice of friends is really problematic. Though they thought this in their hearts, they didn't show it on the outside. After all, Japan's mafia is legal, and it's also legal for mafia members to be friends with ordinary people. No one said the mafia could only befriend other mafia members, right? Hagiwara Kenji got straight to the point and said to Dazai-Osamu, the person you want to investigate has been caught. He confessed to being the one who did this out of spite. Every time the man came to the hotel, he would humiliate him. Knowing that today was his last day staying here, he decided to go all out, waiting for the right moment. He thought that this time was the perfect opportunity, but ended up dragging you into it. The man couldn't believe it. He didn't think it would actually be his own fault. In truth, he had secretly thought they were here to find trouble with the Port Mafia, and he was just the scapegoat. Inspector Megure, in charge of this case, looked seriously at the man. This matter, in fact, stems from you insulting others first. I hope this time you can learn a lesson. Next time you want to take your anger out on someone, think about today. I won't do that again. The man swallowed. Can scolding someone to death really happen? How terrifying. The culprit is the janitor. Dazai-Osamu suddenly interrupted. Can I take a look? Inspector Megure was startled. Don't you have a psychological shadow? Dazai-Osamu. Ahem. Hagiwara Kenji pointed, he's over there. The police officers moved aside from the corridor, showing the detained culprit and an officer sitting together at the end of the long bench. He was wearing handcuffs, dressed in a janitor's uniform, and his eyes were a bit vacant. Dazai-Osamu watched from a distance for a moment, then suddenly took a step forward, walking up to the culprit. The culprit, with a delayed reaction, raised his head to look briefly, then lowered it again. Something feels odd. Komaeda Nagito also approached and asked upon hearing that, what seems odd? Actually, that guy was very well chosen. Last time I was here, I met him too. He's indeed the type to endure bullying quietly without an outburst. Dazai-Osamu stroked his chin. But now, how long has it been since then, and his personality has changed drastically. Dazai-Osamu gave the culprit a light pat on the shoulder. The culprit's entire body trembled, and his eyes suddenly cleared up somewhat. Wait. What was I doing? I see. Dazai-Osamu reached a conclusion. It's possible to guide someone's thoughts. Well then, let me ask you something. Dazai-Osamu smiled cheerfully. Did you recently ask anyone for help or confide in someone? The culprit looked at Dazai-Osamu, who had been awakened from a strange state, and, filled with inexplicable trust, reluctantly calmed down and spoke hesitantly. I don't know. I was just going out for coffee, and during that time, I talked about some work troubles with a guy sharing the table. Dazai-Osamu asked, who was that person? I don't know, but I heard someone call him Kyogoku-san. Oh. Komaeda Nagito suddenly muttered in a low voice. Could it be Kyogoku Natsuhiko? Chapter 45 End.